Good morning or good afternoon. So we're here, we're gonna change oil. It's winter, it's between Christmas and New Year's. So I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt. Just what I do is I wear a long sleeve shirt that I used to, it used to be good for work, with button down collar and everything. Uh, and it just wore out, just, I don't know, got dirty or something and I didn't care for. So I repurposed it for working in the winter on my car. And what we're going to do is we have a couple of things, and I'm going to go through each of the different pieces that we're going to need to get through this. So there's four main parts of an oil refill. The first is we should look at what our current oil situation is. So you should start the car warming up just a little bit, 5 minutes or so. Pull the dipstick, figure out what that oil is looking like. How dark is it? Is it low? We want to understand what has happened over the last 5,000 miles of the oil change. So that's step one. Step two is drain the oil. We're going to do that with a socket. In this case, I'm going to use a socket wrench. You can use an open-end wrench if you want, or any kind of wrench that. In my case, it's 14 millimeters, and that's what I'm going to need. So I have a 14 millimeter socket that I'm going to use. We're going to have a drain bucket for that. So the third thing we have to do is remove the oil filter. Well, in my case, I have a filter element oil filter. So I have one of these to take off the old oil filter. And I have my new oil filter. I'm using a Fram in this case. I haven't actually used a Fram in quite a while. We're going to try it. And then the fourth thing that we'll do is refill the reservoir. So we'll fill up the oil, and we have our new oil here. My car requires 6.5 quarts, so I have to have two 5-quart buckets for that. So that's basically it. A couple of other things that we'll want is a piece of cardboard. And a piece of cardboard is so you can set the oil container on it and pull it out from underneath the car. I'm working on concrete, and there's a lot of resistance on the concrete from the plastic. And if I put this paper down, it pulls out real effortlessly. We'll also need some, and my recommendation is to use some gloves. They're 20 cents a piece. Use them. Don't go cheap on that. You'll need a funnel to fill up the oil in the end. You'll need some paper towels or shop towels to clean up the mess. And I think that's it. So let's get started. And step one, we warmed up the engine. Now we're looking at the oil. And the oil's dark, as one might expect. It's been too long for this last oil change, but it's full. So I'm happy about the fact that it's full. And this is the end of step one. And step two is the more fun part. Step two, you have to get your wrench ready, get your oil down, your oil pan down here, and position it appropriately. And now climb up underneath your car. You might have to have lifted the car up on jack stands or something by this point. But this is step two. Oh, and make sure you're wearing your gloves, because this is the messy part. This is one of the messy parts. Oh, and certainly make sure that you are in the loosen stage, so it's counterclockwise, because so you're going to be probably backwards if like in my case, the plug is on the back side of the oil pan, so it feels like one might be tightening it, but you're really loosening it. So make sure that you adjust the socket to loosen mode, otherwise you will never get it off. And it was that simple. Make sure our bucket is underneath, and now just use your hands to loosen the bolt. The ending step of step two. Some people will disagree with this and say to start step three, which is remove the oil filter first. My recommendation is complete step 2, put this oil plug back in. I have seen people, not just heard of them, but seen people forget to put this plug back in before they start filling up their oil. So my recommendation would be to, as a completion of step 2, put this oil plug back in. It'll take a little while for it to drain. Clean off the plug with paper towels, shop rag or whatever. Clean up the drain plug with paper towel also, just to get all the grime off before you plug this thing back up. So I'm going to try to do this. I'm not going to be able to do this with without putting down the camera, I think. Wow, I am able to do it without the camera. And now don't forget to snug it up. You have to change the direction of your wrench. So now it's on tighten mode. And I am going to put this down because I don't want to over tighten it, so I'm going to put this down now. But the completion of this piece is that I've now tightened the plug. And then we'll move on to step 3, which is to remove the oil filter. Okay, step 3 is actually a multi-step process. And what happens is, because mine is a filter element that I'm replacing, there's 2 pieces to the jug, to the canister. And the first piece is we need to remove the plate at the bottom of the canister. And in my case, I have to use an extender to get the extension. There's a short 3-inch extension. And fortunately, I have the cardboard here, so I just laid it down. And now this is interesting. Oh, this is an interesting part. Now, each time you buy an oil filter, you'll have, in my case, you'll have a drain plug. Now, the frames are actually nicer. Some of them are just clip-in, and they're very hard to maneuver. But this actually is a screw-on connector. So I might actually start using these frames just for this. It just gets so messy when you don't have this. So let's see if I can do this single-handedly. Oh yeah, very nice. And we'll let that drain for a few minutes. I hope I'm getting it in the picture frame. Continuing on with step 3, when most of the oil is drained out, let's take this plug off. And proceed to take the canister off. And that's with this puppy. And in my case, I just have to have this extension because of the body panel here. You may or may not need it. And this one, oh yeah, okay, I can get it. Alright. I thought I was going to have to use 2 hands. Let's see if I can get it. Yeah. There we go. And I didn't get all the oil out. Oh, what a mess. All right. Just is what it is. All right, once you get the canister off, clean it up. There's going to be 2 gaskets that you have to replace on mine. It might be different for yours. Here's the gasket number 1 right here. And I won't be able to do this without using both my hands. And here's the second gasket. So that second gasket is what seals the drain plate that I didn't use so effectively this time. I'm gonna go ahead and spend a few minutes cleaning this up, getting all the oil off, and replacing these gaskets. I'll be back in just a moment. Oh, to that end, make sure that your new filter has the two gaskets as one of the components of the filter. See you in a few minutes. The recommendation as you're putting these things on, make sure to stick your finger inside the new bucket of oil, new jug of oil, and oil it up so it lubricate it so it'll snug up better. Now in my case, I have this secondary little piece. I'll have to screw that on, make sure I put the new gasket inside it, and snug that on. Use your wrench to do so before you put it back on the engine. Now we have this all cleaned up. We have the gaskets oiled with new oil. We're going to put the new canister in. In my case, it doesn't matter, top and bottom are the same. Make sure that, of course, it's the right number. Put that inside the canister, like so. Like so. And now, what I do is I fill this up. Realize my canister is vertical, right? So I can fill up the canister with oil, with fresh oil, before I put it back on the engine. What does this do? It gets oil into the heads faster, so the oil pump is not trying to pump oil through the canister into the heads. It's already started, so you have less dry time that the engine is running. My recommendation is to fill it up as much as you can with fresh oil before you put it back on the engine. So we're still on step 3, remember. We haven't filled up the engine yet. So I'll be right back. I'm going to fill this thing up. We're going to put it on the car. It's all filled up, and now I'm going to put it on the car. I won't be able to do this without 2 hands because it's filled up with oil. So I need to be a little more stable. So I'll be back, and I'm going to put this on the car. All right, now we have to climb up underneath it. I have it hand tightened right now, and now we're going to tighten up the rest. Don't get it crazy tight. Notice my hand is not at the end of the wrench. So now I got it tight, and that's it. I do not have to go crazy tight. I don't actually know what the foot-pounds is on my car because it's a gasket, and there's no reason just to crank it out. Now, in my car, it's unusual because now I have trouble getting this the canister removal tool off. So I have to, and I'm going to have to do this with 2 hands. I have to kind of go back and forth. Let's see if I can do it with 1 hand. If you heard it click, oh yeah, oh man, that actually works better than normal. Usually it's very hard. So, and that's it. So now we've done step 1, which is check the oil at the top. We've done step 2, which is drain the oil and put the plug back in. And step 3, which is drain the filter and put a brand new filter in. So next, we're ready for step 4. And step 4, if you remember, is filling it up. So in my case, I have a 6.5 quart engine. Why? Because it's Canadian. So that happens to be a very special number in liters, 6 liters exactly. So that's the reason I have a 6.5 quart engine. I thought it was kind of funny, and it took me a little while to figure out why that is. And then when I kind of made the metric to say conversion, I realized that that's the reason. So we're going to fill it up. This is kind of being a non-event. My hands are of course filthy with all the oil that I've spilled. We're going to use a funnel to fill up, and I'll be right back as I'm prepping up. And I just realized there is no way that I'm going to be able to do this without 2 hands. So I'm going to have to show you what I'm going to do. So I have the filler plug. I'm sorry, the filler pipe open. I took off the filler cap, and I'm going to use the funnel, stick it right in there. I'm going to put 5 quarts in first, and then I have to measure out of the canisters I have the 1.5 quarts, and I'll show you what I do. I'll be right back. Now my situation is now I have a 5 quart jug that's empty, and there's little reservoir measures on the side. I can't do this with one hand, so I have quarts on the right and liters on the left. So I need 6.5 quarts, so I need to fill it up one and in between. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill up this extra reservoir, this now empty reservoir, with 1.5 quarts of oil from my other jug, from my brand new filled jug. And that way I know how much I'm putting inside my car. I don't need an extra jug to do this. I don't need a measuring cup. I don't need anything. I just use the jug that I'm getting ready to throw away. So, but I have to do this with 2 hands, unfortunately. So I'll be back. And there you have it. I have 1.5 quarts in this extra jug, in this jug that was empty. So I'm going to fill this up in the car, and I'll be right back. I can't do it with one hand. Now, before we start the car, we are going to put the filler cap back on. I like to do this a little more methodically than maybe some other people, but my idea is complete each of the steps independently, and instead of going back through it and trying to fix it, or trying to remeasure, if you will, or recalibrate. So now the cap is back on. The oil drain plug is on, of course, because we made sure of that. And the filter is on, brand new filter is on. We haven't checked the level of the oil yet. That said, I don't have 5 quarts of oil on the ground, so I know it's inside the engine. So next we're gonna wrap up out here for the moment, and we're gonna start the engine. And I'm gonna show you how I do it to make sure that it doesn't, that we don't have any problems. I forgot one vital piece of this is cleaning up. So I actually already took off my gloves, but my recommendation would be to clean up everything while you still have the gloves on. Here's the old oil filter. So in my case, I'm gonna recommend to you to use several bags from the grocery store, or in this case Walgreens, and because it's just oil, it's just a mess. So give me a few minutes. I'm going to do this, and I'm also, oh, and watch this. See how smoothly that comes out? Didn't even have to get underneath the car, and it's a mess because if you remember, I didn't let the filter drain out all the way. So I'm going to fill up this jug here with the old oil, and we'll be good to go and ready to start the car. I like to clean up all this before I start the car. Why? Because you have to at some point, and at this point you probably still have your gloves on. Now I'm trying to do my oil. So you came out just in time. So my dad just came out, and he's going to be able to help me fill up the jug with the old oil so it doesn't tip over. So thanks for coming out. I do. He thought I needed some help, and I do. That's perfect. So it's always good to have a companion. Okay, doke. So we're in our car, and we're getting ready to start her up. And the first thing you'll notice is, wow. So I filled it up adequately. I filled up the reservoir adequately. I'm sorry, the oil filter adequately, that it did not wind up showing an oil problem. So what'll happen sometimes is you'll see just for a moment low oil pressure, and then it'll resolve. But because I filled up the filter so full, it didn't even give me that problem. So that's great. I'm happy for that. Of course, like, I'm all cleaned up now, so my hands are clean, so I don't have any dirt and grime inside the car, and looks like all our sensors are off, so that's good. We're done. So, congratulations folks, you did an oil change.